sun as kind of what shows you what's real, but we also know that for Plato, the idealism requires us to think of the good as really what we might call God. That gives us all the perfect ideas, which we're understanding in the shape of the table, the best song, what makes the best song, and so on. Well, Aristotle, remember, he loves those who love the ideas, but he loves truth more, and so he's going to critique those ideas and point out that in order for anything to exist, number one, it has to have substance. So let's take a look at his categories. There we have them right here. It looks like, is that all of them? Substance, quantity, quality, relatives, that's it related to, somewhere, sometime, being in a position, like sitting down, lying down, that kind of position, sitting on the ground, having, you have a blue shirt on, okay. Acting, I'm acting like a professor. Sorry. Any of you discovered how it's just a pretense? I'm just pretending to be a professor. You know how that is? You ever worry about that? I'm just pretending to be a dad, just pretending to be a citizen. The whole time I was in the Army, I did everything that the Army said, you do this, yes. Push-ups, et cetera, et cetera. I did all that stuff. But I was always just pretending. I was never really in the Army. Don't tell me. I'm just acting like I'm in the Army. And the drill sergeant stands in your face and says, "You're dumber than a, whatever, and you're, yes, drill sergeant, and you're thinking to yourself, don't laugh. That'll just make it worse. Don't laugh. Don't laugh at it. I was just pretending. So you're acting. That's not completely what he means, but and being acted upon, right? So these categories are characteristics that everything has that exists. Or it doesn't exist. I mean, because these are the kinds of things that we mean by saying that something has substance, it's acted on, it's made into a chair, people sit on it, it's, related to the other chairs in the room, that kind of thing. So these categories are characteristics of everything. And besides all that, time is necessary for everything as well. And it's interesting how these categories are here. Many, many moons later, we'll discover that these categories are still very much a part of the tradition of thought, but we might get a few different ones. It'll change a little bit. Kant likes 12, and so we end up with 12 categories with Kant. So that's kind of intriguing how that works. And keep in mind, too, that for Aristotle, once you define a category, and you could say all the members of the set. One person gave me a true statement. I think it was all whales are whales. Yes? Somebody gave me that one? Maybe it was different. In any case, all whales are whales. I'm thinking, why is this one so difficult? Because you're basically saying this set is this set, and you're not saying that this set is in this set. So that one I had difficulty with. In a sense, I was thinking, well, it's not really a true statement. It's just a reiteration of whales are whales. Okay, you're not telling me anything. So I can't say, well, it's not true or false. It's of course. What do you think? But if you have all of the definitions, and they're all universals, that's the kind of knowledge that we think of as absolute knowledge, in a sense. The encyclopedic. Right? And in a sense, Aristotle was trying to give us an encyclopedia of all the things. And if you describe all the animals, all the shapes of the animals, the gait of the animals, the way things are, living and dying, you're basically describing all the things that are, right? As far as Aristotle knew. And in fact, he had help. Remember, his student, Alexander the Great, went traversing, all over the place, killing people, and actually encouraging people to join him. And that was, kind of like the way we did in Iraq. We're here as liberators, so join us. Oh, okay. That worked for him pretty well. He still had to fight other people, but basically he ended up with a global empire, right? Alexander the Great. And while he was doing all of that, he apparently had about 10,000 men or so that were constantly going back and forth with things to Athens. And many of those things were presents for Aristotle of different animals and things and plants that Aristotle didn't know about. So, in a sense, the Lyceum at this time must have been something like a zoo with all these different animals coming in and the different plants and all. I imagine Aristotle's not the only one sitting down trying to draw all these different plants and figuring out what categories these different plants fit into. So basically he's figuring this is the project. We describe everything as they are, and we're done. We know everything, right? An encyclopedia, basically. And ever since then, we also have the sense that there's two different kinds of knowledge. The one is the knowledge of all of those definitions, and the other kind of knowledge is the particular knowledge, like that Pop-Tart is broken in half, and there's one bite out of it. That's not something that's true of all Pop-Tarts. That's true of that particular Pop-Tart. Can I have a bite? No, I'm just being funny. Which you're supposed to be funny if you're going to be a good teacher, because otherwise you bore people to death and they fall asleep. Which I have done to people. I've done that to people. Okay, so universal knowledge versus what is called synthetic knowledge. The knowledge of that particular Pop-Tart is synthetic. That's what that word is used for, right? And so when you get to 1951, and Willard Van Orman Quine, an American philosopher, publishes 1951. I met him, by the way. He came to my alma mater and gave a lecture. That's amazing. But he became famous because of this particular article called Two Dogmas of Empiricism. And the one, universal knowledge, is also referred to as analytic. So analyticity, studying that. He demonstrates that actually universal knowledge and synthetic knowledge, or particular knowledge, actually are equivalent to one another in a way. And you end up with a logical rule, which is referred to as the equivalence of, now my mind is stuck. The things you put out in the front of the quantifiers. Thank you. The quantifiers. So if you have a universal quantifier, how many of you noticed in the square of opposition if you read further down than I really meant for you to go, you saw the modern logic notation, and you had the square. You had two different types of statements. The top two, the universal statements, had a different kind of quantifier, a universal quantifier, and the two bottom ones had a particular or synthetic quantifier, right? Quine in this article demonstrates that for any quantifier you take, it is equivalent to the opposite quantifier as a result of certain steps, logical steps. So in other words, there's an equivalence between the universal knowledge on the one hand and the particular knowledge on the other. And so after 2,300 years, suddenly everybody that was interested in this stuff had a completely different view of the difference that Aristotle gave us. So that was pretty important, and Quine became famous, etc. Okay, so the categories. And then when we get to the metaphysics and the ethics, he points out that what is the good? Aristotle is trying to figure out the answers to the questions that Plato was asking his teacher. And Plato's trying to figure out the nature of the good. Remember, if you're emulating Socrates and you were asking a particular question like we did with Euthyphro, right? What is pious? All you do is frustrate the heck out of anybody because you end up with a question that really can't be answered. When we move into the middle period of Plato's dialogues, which are dialogues, notice, there are lots of different people all arguing with one another. Notice when you look at Aristotle, you don't have dialogues, you have boring teacher's notes. They're impenetrable, as that biologist said in the video, right? But they're magnificent. Okay. He's trying to solve the problem that Plato was trying to solve. What is the good? Well, if we're going to do it in a very concrete, empirical fashion, the good is what you strive for in every endeavor. So if I'm trying to make a good pizza, I make the pizza the way I like it, I cook it, and I taste it, and it's like, yes, this is a good pizza. You might not like it. Because, that's not the way I make it. I make it like this. And I'm thinking, yeah. Because, we have different tastes, right? I have no clue what kind of pizza she likes. I'm just, imagining, that people have different tastes, right? So what I think of as a good pizza is not going to be the same as what you think, right? So Plato's wrong about the idea that the good should kind of be like, a siphon of some sort, where everything is moving towards the top of the mountain. There are multiple peaks, of all different kinds of mountains, right? So Aristotle is much closer to really what we think today, that everybody has their own preference, right? But nonetheless, and I think I mentioned already, that he thought this would be a fact. So there's actually a fact as to which pizza is the best in a particular situation. It could be very confusing, depending on what, you zero in on. Somebody asked me, what does he mean by substance? And, when you start reading articles about what he meant by substance, they like to point out that, people have been confused about that for 2,300 years. Basically, though, when he thought substance was earth, air, fire, water, and a fifth element. And by the way, the fifth element is not a cute little redhead that hardly wears anything when she first shows up. Anybody familiar with the fifth element? One person.
Oh, you did your own. Okay,
Yes,
yeah.
Leilu. Leilu.
Yeah, that one. Okay,
Yeah.
I got it.
That could have been funny, you know, if everybody knew what I was talking
Yeah,
about.
sorry,
That's
sorry.
not the fifth element according to Aristotle.
Sorry, I haven't seen that in 10 years. It's been a minute.
I can still see, you know, remember the Lion King? Why did Mufasa die? He didn't Mufasa. You know, why did Leilu? Flip, 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 you know, she was just born. How does she learn all that stuff? Well, she's, what is she? She's the fifth element, but she's also not a god. What does she call herself? Shoot, here I am talking about how great my memory is, and I can't remember. The divine being. I'm the divine being. Oh, you know, I don't know if you've ever had a date where you meet, you know, a young lady and you ask her who she is, and she says, "I'm the divine being." Okay. I'll go with that. That's fine. But that was a fun move. But no, Aristotle meant that the fifth element was ether. And that's what held the stars up. So he did believe that the earth was